You know, we all think we know the Christmas story. But if you really dig into Matthew chapter 2, it's not just a peaceful story about a baby in a manger. Oh no, it's a high-stakes political thriller. It's really about the collision of two kingdoms and two very, very different kinds of kings.
So the story kicks off not with a quiet, holy night, but with this, a politically explosive question. Imagine this, a delegation of foreign dignitaries, the Magi, shows up in the capital city, Jerusalem, and their very first words are a direct challenge to the guy on the throne. A question like that, it sends the entire city into a panic.
All right, so here's how we're going to walk through this chapter. First, we'll look at the political crisis this birth ignites. Then, we'll explore three totally different reactions to this new king. After that, we dive into a secret war of deception and divine guidance. Then we follow the Messiah on the run, and we'll wrap it all up with a really powerful idea that I like to call the Nazareth Principle.
To really get the chaos here, you have to understand the context. See, the Magi weren't just some curious stargazers. They were most likely high-level advisors from a foreign power. So for them to show up in Jerusalem asking for a new king of the Jews, well, that's like a foreign delegation arriving in Washington, D.C. today and asking to see the leader of the opposition. It's a direct political threat.
Okay, so let's meet the first king in our story, King Herod. This guy, sanctioned by Rome, was a brilliant builder for sure, but he was also a deeply paranoid and ruthless tyrant. I mean, this is a man who had already executed his own wife and several of his sons because he was afraid they were trying to take his throne. So when he hears that a legitimate king of the Jews has been born, let me tell you, the word disturbed is a massive understatement. He sees a threat, and that threat has to be eliminated.
So the announcement of this new king, it's like a litmus test, you know? It just reveals the heart of everyone who hears it. And we see three key groups emerge, and wow, their reactions could not be more different. This is where the story gets really, really fascinating.
The contrast here is just so stark. First, you've got the Magi. These are foreigners who travel for months, guided by faith, just because they want to worship. Then you have King Herod, who responds with sheer terror, plotting violence to protect his own power. But honestly, the most shocking reaction of all comes from the chief priests and scribes. These guys know the prophecies inside and out. They can quote the scripture perfectly, and yet they do nothing. They don't even walk the few miles to Bethlehem to see for themselves. Their indifference is just profound. They had the sacred text, but absolutely no desire to meet its subject.
So with the battle lines drawn, the story shifts into this sort of cloak and dagger narrative. It's fascinating. On one side, you've got Herod's cunning political schemes, and on the other, you have God's quiet, divine interventions through things like dreams and unexpected provision.
So Herod calls the Magi in for a secret meeting. He plays the part of a devout follower, saying, "Oh yeah, I want to worship the child too." But it's all a lie, a complete deception. He's trying to use their genuine faith as an intelligence-gathering mission. He wants them to pinpoint the child's location so he can send his soldiers to kill him. It is pure treachery hiding behind holy words.
Meanwhile, the Magi find Jesus and present their gifts. And these gifts are incredible because they basically map out his entire life's purpose. Gold, well, that's the standard gift for a king, right? It acknowledges his royalty. Frankincense was a crazy expensive incense used by priests in the temple, which points to his divinity, his role as our great high priest. And then there's myrrh. Myrrh was an aromatic resin used for one primary thing, embalming the dead. Think about that. What a strange gift for a baby. It foreshadows his future suffering and his sacrificial death.
And you know, there's a really practical side to this too. Joseph and Mary, they were a poor family. A sudden escape to a foreign country would have been almost impossible financially. So it's widely believed that these incredibly valuable gifts were the very funds they needed to flee Herod's wrath. It's just a beautiful picture of divine provision, how God can use the worship of one group of people to protect the mission of another.
And just when it seems like Herod's trap is about to spring, God intervenes. He warns the Magi in a dream, "Don't go back to Herod." And they listen. They obey, and they leave by a different route, completely wrecking Herod's plan. It just goes to show you that no human scheme, no matter how powerful or how cunning, can ever stop God's intentions.
So once Herod realizes he's been tricked, his paranoia just boils over into pure rage. The danger becomes absolutely critical. and the family has to flee for their lives. This is not a peaceful nativity scene anymore. This is a family becoming refugees overnight.
Now, for the second time in just 2 chapters, an angel appears to Joseph in a dream. But this message isn't one of comfort, it's one of extreme urgency. The words are so direct, so sharp. Get up, escape. Herod is going to search for the child to destroy him. The threat is not just possible, it's imminent and deadly.
And just look at Joseph's response. He doesn't question, he doesn't argue, he doesn't say, let me pack in the morning, or, well, we need to say our goodbyes. No, the text specifically says he got up during the night and left. That is immediate, radical, unquestioning obedience. He trusts the divine warning more than his own comfort, more than his own plans.
This moment is just so powerful for our own reflection, isn't it? Joseph's immediate action protected his family and God's entire plan. It really makes you ask yourself, when we feel that sense of guidance or conviction in our own lives, what do our delays, our excuses, our hesitations, what do they say about our own level of trust? And even in this desperate escape, another layer of God's amazing design is revealed. This journey to Egypt actually fulfills a prophecy from the book of Hosea. Out of Egypt I called my son. Now, originally, this was talking about God leading the nation of Israel out of slavery. But now, Jesus' life is literally retracing the steps of his people. It's showing that he is the true son, the perfect embodiment of Israel's whole story.
So after Herod finally dies, the family is guided to return to Israel. But they don't go back to the royal city of Bethlehem or the capital Jerusalem. Instead, they're led to this tiny, obscure town up in Galilee. And this brings us to our final and maybe most powerful theme.
Let's just call this the Nazareth principle. It's this recurring theme you see all through the Bible, that God deliberately chooses the things the world considers foolish or weak or insignificant to accomplish his greatest work. He completely subverts all of our human ideas about power and prestige and importance.
And please do not underestimate just how despised Nazareth was. This quote from the Gospel of John, it captures the sentiment perfectly. When a guy named Nathanael, who's described as a good, honest man, hears the Messiah is from Nazareth, his immediate gut reaction is just mockery. It was a dusty, forgotten backwater town. It was literally the last place on earth anyone would expect a king to come from. And that was precisely the point.
So the story that began with kings and spies and political intrigue, it ends in an obscure, forgotten town. It's such a powerful reminder that God's kingdom often operates way outside the world's centers of power. His greatest work unfolds in the places we tend to dismiss. So that leaves us with a final thought. Where in our own lives, in the humble, the unexpected, or the overlooked places and people, might we be missing God at work?